I never imagined I'd be telling this story. Not because I'm ashamed, although, trust me, there were moments that almost broke me, but because the person I used to be would never have believed I could do what I did to it. All started on an ordinary Monday morning. You know the kind, gray skies, lukewarm coffee, and the same elevator right up to the 19th floor of the Parker and Row corporate tower. I'd been working there for 7 years. 7 long years of giving everything I had. Late nights, cancelled weekends, sacrificing vacations just to make sure every report, every pitch, every project was flawless. I wasn't just an employee. I was the employee they could count on. The one who fixed other people's mistakes. The one who trained new hires without getting extra pay. The one who got called in at 11 p.m. because a client had a small concern. And I did it all because I believed in something, the promise my boss, Victor Hammond, had made me 3 years ago. "Keep this up," he'd said, leaning back in his leather chair, "and when the time is right, you'll be next in line for the director position. Big pay raise. Bigger office. A real future here." 3 years. 3 years of telling myself that every sleepless night was just an investment. 3 years of picturing myself in that corner office, with the skyline behind me and my name on the door, and then came the Friday. The Friday that changed everything. That morning, I was in the break room pouring coffee when I overheard something, Victor's voice, low and smug, coming from around the corner. I froze, coffee halfway to the cup. "She's expecting the promotion," he was saying to someone. "Poor thing has no idea we're bringing in someone from outside." I remember my stomach tightening. I thought maybe I misheard. Maybe she wasn't me. But then came the words that confirmed it, 7 years here, and she's still naive enough to think loyalty means anything. I stayed frozen there, the coffee machine hissing in the background, feeling like my entire body was made of glass, fragile. And about to shatter. I didn't walk in and confront him. Not yet. Because in that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't know it yet, but that was the exact second I stopped being the loyal employee. And I started becoming something else entirely. The following Monday was supposed to be my promotion meeting. I wore my best navy suit, the one I'd been saving for this day. I even ironed it twice, as if sharp creases could somehow make the moment perfect. I rehearsed my thank you speech in my head during the elevator ride, but when I stepped into Victor's office, there was no celebratory smile. No handshake. Just that fake corporate grin he used when delivering bad news. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I sat. And then he did it. With the most casual tone in the world, he told me my position was being eliminated. Not transferred. Not downgraded. Eliminated. My first instinct was to fight, to list every late night, every client I'd saved, every time I'd done work that wasn't even mine. But something stopped me. A sudden, razor-sharp thought, no. Don't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, it was the kind of smile that says, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to beg for my job back. I was going to take down the entire company, and that was the beginning. I walked out of Victor's office without saying a single word. Not because I didn't have anything to say, oh, I had plenty, but because I knew my words wouldn't matter. He'd already decided I was disposable. I passed by the rows of cubicles, faces turned toward me. Some curious, some pitying, some avoiding eye contact altogether. That's when I realized, people already knew corporate gossip travels faster than email. And the way my coworker Denise wouldn't quite meet my eyes told me she'd probably heard about this days ago. Funny. How no one said anything. I didn't go back to my desk. Instead, I grabbed my bag, my coffee mug, and the framed picture of my parents that had been sitting on my desk for years. 7 years, and that was all I was leaving with. The elevator ride down felt endless. I kept staring at the glowing numbers above the door, thinking about how just a few minutes earlier, I'd been picturing my life going up. Now, I was headed down, literally and figuratively. When the doors opened, the lobby felt different. Colder. And that's when I saw her, the replacement. She was standing by the reception desk, laughing at something the receptionist said. Mid-30s. Perfectly styled hair, expensive handbag dangling from her arm. I didn't know her name yet, but her smile told me everything. She knew exactly who I was. And she knew exactly what position she'd taken from me. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I walked right past, stepped out into the cold air, and let the city swallow me whole. For the rest of that day, I didn't answer calls. Not from friends, not from family. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall, thinking about every sacrifice I'd made for that company. And then I remembered something small, something Victor probably thought I'd forgotten. 3 years ago, during one of our late-night strategy meetings, he told me about a sensitive project. Something that was still under the radar. Something that, if leaked, could cause irreversible damage to the company's reputation. At the time, I didn't care. I was loyal. I protected that information like it was my own. But now it felt like the first weapon in my arsenal. Of that night, I made a list. Not just of what Victor had done to me, but of every shady deal, every whispered conversation, every suspicious client interaction I'd witnessed over the years. Names, dates, details. It was all still in my head. And if it wasn't, well, I'd kept backups. By the time I went to bed, the list was 2 full pages long. And as I looked at it, I didn't feel defeated anymore. I felt powerful. Victor thought he'd ended my career. What he didn't know was that he'd just given me a new mission. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't stop my mind from replaying every word Victor said, every smug smirk he'd flashed when he told me my services were no longer required. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching a mug of coffee like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. The city outside was still half asleep, streetlights flickering against the fog. It felt like the perfect backdrop for the kind of morning where you decide whether to crumble or fight back. I chose fight. My first move wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some cinematic, all caps, take down the company moment. It was subtle. Measured. I opened my laptop and went straight to an old hard drive I hadn't touched in years. One by one, I began pulling up archived emails, contracts, project files, things the company thought were long gone. Victor always believed in verbal agreements for the dirtier deals, but I was the one who sent the follow-up emails, just to confirm. Guess who had the receipts now? By the time the sun broke through my blinds, I had enough material to raise eyebrows in at least 3 different government agencies, but information without a strategy? That's just noise. So, I started mapping it out, literally. A giant whiteboard I'd bought years ago for creative brainstorming suddenly became the war room. I wrote Victor's name in the center, circled it, and drew lines out to other names, department heads, big clients, shadowy consultants who never appeared on official payroll. The web was bigger than I remembered, and then there was Denise. She'd avoided my eyes yesterday. But Denise wasn't just a coworker, she was the person who managed Victor's schedule, his calls, his private meetings. If anyone knew where the skeletons were buried, it was her. And the thing about Denise? She hated Victor almost as much as I did. I didn't reach out right away. Patience is a weapon. Instead, I spent the next 2 days planting seeds, liking her social media posts, casually commenting on a picture of her cat, sending a "hope you're doing okay" text that looked innocent enough that it worked. By Friday afternoon, she invited me for drinks. We met at a quiet bar near the river, the kind of place where the bartender knows when to disappear. She didn't even order before leaning in and whispering, "You're not the only one he screwed over." My pulse quickened. The game had just changed. Denise waited until the bartender walked away before speaking again. Her voice was low, but every word carried weight. "He's been funneling money through fake vendors. Ones that don't even exist. Guess whose name is on the paperwork for approving them?" She took a slow sip of her drink, eyes locking onto mine. "Mine. And yours." without us even knowing. It hit me like a punch. Victor hadn't just fired me, he'd set me up to take the fall if someone started digging. I leaned back, trying to keep my face calm while my brain went into overdrive. If this was true, and I knew it was, then I wasn't just holding evidence of shady deals. I was holding proof of outright fraud. Federal fraud. We talked for nearly 3 hours. Every now and then, Denise would lower her voice to a whisper, glance over her shoulder, then keep going. She told me about the special accounts of Victor kept in a bank offshore, the private meetings in hotel conference rooms, the files that mysteriously disappeared from the company's server right before an audit. By the time we left the bar, I knew 2 things. Denise was my inside source. This wasn't going to be just revenge. This was going to be destruction. Over the next week, we became an invisible team. She'd accidentally forward me documents, disguised as mistakes. I'd save them on an encrypted drive, cross-referencing every suspicious transaction with the emails I'd pulled from my old hard drive. But here's the thing about revenge: the moment you get close, you have to fight the urge to move too fast. Victor had eyes everywhere, and one wrong move could make him smell blood. So I played it cool. I posted happy photos on social media, brunch with friends, a fake new job interview selfie, even a picture of me reading on the balcony with a glass of wine. Let him think I'd moved on. Meanwhile, every night, I sat at my kitchen table, piecing together a puzzle that could burn him to the ground. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday. Denise sent me a single text: check the shared drive. Folder. Name, Q4 Special Projects. I opened it. Inside were scanned invoices for consulting services, totaling over $2 million, paid to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. The kicker? The shell company's listed owner was Carter Wren. Carter was Victor's college roommate. The same Carter who'd mysteriously shown up at the office a year ago and helped on a major project before disappearing. I didn't need a map to see where this was going. I started digging into Carter that same night. No sleep, no breaks, just me, my laptop, and a pot of coffee that went cold. Hours ago. It didn't take long to find him. Carter Wren wasn't exactly subtle. His Instagram was a gallery of yacht trips, champagne toasts, and beachfront villas. Every few months, there'd be a photo of him with Victor, both of them grinning like kings who owned the world. But what really caught my attention wasn't the lifestyle. It was the timeline. Every spike in Carter's luxury posts lined up perfectly with one of those consulting services payments. It was like watching money laundering in real time, only with better lighting. I called Denise the next morning. Her voice was groggy, like I'd woken her, but when I told her what I'd found, she was wide awake. You're telling me you can tie Victor's payments directly to Carter's spending? Yes. And I'm telling you it's so obvious, a first-year law student could argue the case. There was silence on the other end. Then, we need someone bigger than the police. Someone who can't be bought. She was right. If Victor had the kind of money we were talking about, he could bury a police report in minutes. That's when I decided to contact a friend from college, Liam Torres. Back then, he was just another journalism major with a knack for digging up stories professors didn't want printed. Now, he was an investigative reporter for one of the most respected financial expose outlets in the country. I sent him an encrypted email. No names, no direct details, just a hint: I have proof of corporate fraud involving offshore accounts, falsified invoices, and shell companies. Estimated theft, millions. Interested? His reply came within an hour: meet me. No phones. No electronics. Sunday, 8 p.m., at the pier. That meeting felt like something out of a spy movie. The pier was nearly empty, waves slapping against the wooden posts, the air thick with the smell of salt and gasoline. Liam wore a hooded jacket, his hands deep in the pockets. I handed him a flash drive. Inside it were weeks' worth of collected evidence, emails, bank statements, transaction records, and yes, Carter's Instagram timeline for a little of visual drama. He scrolled through a few files and let out a low whistle. If even half of this is legit, your boss is finished. Oh, it's legit, I said. Now the question is, how do we make it loud enough that no one can sweep it under the rug? From that night on, the plan became much bigger than just taking down Victor. It became about destroying his safety net, too. No more friends in high places. No more hidden accounts. No more options that we'd feed the story to the public at the exact same moment the feds got the full package. Hit him from both sides. One blow to his reputation, another to his freedom, but timing was everything. And that's when Denise gave me the final piece of the puzzle, something that could turn this from a takedown into an absolute annihilation, *the. Next morning, Denise called me out to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. When I walked in, the air smelled like rust and dust. Old cardboard boxes were stacked high, shelves sagging under their weight. But in the far corner, I saw it, a massive steel safe. "What is that?" I asked. Denise knelt down, spun the dial, and pulled the door open with a metallic groan. Inside were hundreds of files, backup drives, and Victor's personal journals. "This," she said, "is his black box. Every dirty deal, every politician he paid off, every rival he destroyed, it's all in here." She handed me the thickest folder. 3 words were stamped on the front: Project Eden, confidential. The deeper I read, the colder my hands felt. Victor wasn't just manipulating businesses. He was systematically bankrupting smaller competitors, buying them out for pennies, and, or worse, pushing certain people into financial ruin so severe, they never recovered. Some didn't survive. Denise's voice cut through my thoughts. I was the daughter of one of those people. It all clicked. This wasn't just revenge for her, this was justice. But our final move had to be flawless. It wasn't enough to leak the documents to the press. We had to get them into the hands of the federal prosecutor, and make sure Victor had no escape. For 2 weeks, we disappeared. No phones. No home visits. Every meeting was in a different location. Victor was starting to sense the storm closing in, and he was desperate. On the last day, we delivered the evidence. As cameras flashed outside the courthouse, Denise looked straight into the lenses and said, "Underestimating me was the most expensive mistake of his life." 3 months later, Victor was in handcuffs. His empire collapsed overnight, his mansion was auctioned off, and the very people he once called allies refused to even take his calls. And Denise? She looked at me one last time, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Revenge," she said, "is best served when it's smart, patient, and final." Victor's arrest made headlines for weeks. The media loved it, photos of him in an orange jumpsuit, the once powerful man now reduced to a number in the system. But for Denise and me, the real story was just beginning, because Victor wasn't the kind of man to go down quietly. 2 weeks after his sentencing, strange things started happening. My apartment door had fresh scratches near the lock, like someone had tried to force it open. Denise's car alarm went off 3 times in one night, and when she checked, all 4 tires were slashed. At first, we thought it was just loyalists from his inner circle trying to scare us. But then we got the message. A single white envelope slid under my door in the middle of the night. No return address. Inside, a photo of me leaving the courthouse with Denise, taken from across the street. On the back, written in shaky pen, "It's not over." Denise wasn't shaken. In fact, she seemed almost energized. "He's trying to play fear games from a cage," she said. "That means we hit a nerve." We ramped up security, different routes home, burner phones, encrypted email. But deep down, I knew Victor had connections that didn't end at prison walls. And I was right. One night, while reviewing old files from the safe, I found a name I didn't recognize: Harper Voss. Cross-referencing with public records showed Harper was a private investigator with a record of unconventional jobs. The kicker? Harper had visited Victor in prison exactly 1 week earlier. I called Denise immediately. "He's outsourcing his revenge," I told her. Her voice was cold steel. "Then we don't wait for the hit, we find the hitman." What followed felt like a chess match in the dark. Denise and I trailed Harper for days, documenting every meeting, every suspicious handoff. We pieced together a network of old contacts still loyal to Victor, ex-business partners, dirty lawyers, even a judge under investigation for bribery. The real twist came when we discovered Harper wasn't just targeting us. He was trying to retrieve one file from the black box, a file Denise hadn't shown me. When I confronted her, she hesitated. "I didn't want you involved in this part," she admitted. "Because it's not just Victor's crime. It's mine, too." That was the moment I realized Denise's story wasn't over. And the danger we thought we'd escaped was only the first act. Harper was smart. Too smart to get caught doing anything obvious. He didn't follow us directly, didn't send threats in his own handwriting. He used proxies, random strangers who didn't even know they were part of the game. A delivery driver would drop off a package at my door, but inside it would be an empty box. Just to make me open it and wonder. A teenage kid on a bike would accidentally crash into Denise's car, only for us to find a listening device hidden under the wheel well afterward. It was psychological warfare, but the real battle was happening in the shadows, where Denise was hiding something big. I pressed her again one night while we were combing through surveillance photos. "What's in that file, Denise?" "The one Harper's after." She stared at the photos for a long time before answering. "It's proof that Victor wasn't the only one laundering money through the offshore accounts," she said finally. "I was his partner. I knew it was dirty. I just didn't know how deep it went until it was too late." I sat there in stunned silence. "So if Harper gets that file, he can bury me," she said, her voice flat. "Legally. Publicly. Completely." That was when I understood why she'd been so fearless. She wasn't just fighting for revenge, she was fighting for survival. From that moment, our mission changed. It wasn't just about taking down Victor. It was about erasing every piece of evidence that could destroy Denise. We tracked Harper to an old warehouse near the docks, one of Victor's old smuggling hubs. Getting inside wasn't hard, he relied on secrecy, not security, but finding the file meant searching through mountains of dusty boxes, each filled with paper trails, receipts, contracts. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, and then we heard footsteps. That Harper's voice cut through the shadows. "You really should have stayed out of this." I don't know if it was adrenaline or stupidity, but I stepped out from behind the shelf. "If you're going to threaten us, at least do it face to face." He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just tossed a small flash drive onto the floor. "Everything you're looking for is on there. But I'll warn you, once you open it, you'll wish you hadn't." Denise bent down, picked it up, and without another word, walked past him like he didn't exist. It wasn't until we were back at her apartment that I realized my hands were shaking. She plugged the drive into her laptop, and the screen filled with folders. The first one was labeled Black Ledger, 2017. What we saw next wasn't just about Victor's empire, it was about half the city's elite. Judges, politicians, corporate executives. And Denise, right in the middle of it all. The air in Denise's apartment felt heavier after we saw the contents of that flash drive. It wasn't just corruption, it was an entire blueprint of how the city's power worked. Every payoff, every offshore account, every politician bought and sold like a cheap trinket at a flea market, and Denise was in half the photos. "You were everywhere," I said quietly. She didn't flinch. "I was the gatekeeper. The one who made sure the right people stayed untouchable. Until Victor made me disposable." That was when I realized something. Denise wasn't just a former partner. She was the architect of the entire machine, but now she was ready to burn it all. Our first move was subtle, leak just enough dirt on Victor to make his allies paranoid. We sent anonymous tips to 2 rival CEOs. Each one thinking the other was about to betray them. Within days, their alliance collapsed. Stocks tanked. Victor's phone calls went unanswered. Meanwhile, Harper kept circling. He wasn't stupid, he knew Denise had the drive. But instead of coming for it, he came for her reputation. It started small. An anonymous blog post linking Denise to a decades-old bribery scandal. Then another, accusing her of insider trading. None of it could be proven, but in the court of public opinion, proof didn't matter. We fought back by weaponizing the truth. Denise handed me a sealed envelope one night and said, "If something happens to me, you release this." To everyone. Inside were the names of 3 sitting judges who'd taken Victor's money. It was nuclear. When Victor finally realized who was behind the chaos, he sent a message through Harper. It was short: "You want war? You got it." The next day, my apartment was broken into. They didn't take anything. They just rearranged the furniture, so I'd know they'd been there. That was the moment I stopped being afraid that we went after Victor's weakest link, his accountant. A man named Ray with a gambling problem and a fear of prison. It took 2 meetings, one whispered promise of protection, and a single plane ticket to get him talking. Ray gave us everything. Bank passwords. Offshore account numbers. Shell company ownership papers. It was the financial equivalent of pulling the pin on a grenade and handing it to us. From there, it became a siege. We drained one account after another, funneling the money into a trust that Victor couldn't touch. We tipped off the IRS about a mysterious tax discrepancy. We made his legal team so busy putting out fires they didn't see the blaze spreading under their feet, and then Denise made her boldest move yet. She called Victor on speakerphone. With me sitting right beside her. "You remember what you said the day you cut me out?" she asked. Silence. Then a low chuckle. "You were always too ambitious for your own good." She leaned back in her chair. "Good. Then you'll appreciate this. I'm not coming for your company, Victor. I'm coming for you." Victor thought he'd seen war before. He hadn't. The first blow landed on a Tuesday morning. A series of anonymous leaks hit the press of photographs, contracts, and recorded phone calls showing how Victor's corporations had funneled millions into political campaigns in exchange for zoning exemptions. By noon, 2 senators were on TV swearing they had no knowledge of any wrongdoing. By nightfall, one of them had resigned. The second blow came from inside. Ray, the accountant we'd flipped, went public, semi-public. He gave an exclusive interview to a small but vicious investigative news channel. It was the kind of outlet that didn't care about lawsuits, because they were already living off them. Not Victor's name was now everywhere, his face splashed across headlines that paired words like fraud, racketeering, and criminal conspiracy with photos of him looking smug at charity galas. But Denise didn't want him just humiliated. She wanted him erased. We moved into the 3rd phase, targeting the people who still protected him. One by one, Victor's allies found themselves in sudden legal trouble. The shipping magnate in Miami? Arrested on drug trafficking charges after customs randomly inspected his containers. The banker in Zurich? Exposed for laundering money for Eastern European crime syndicates. The city councilman who'd been Victor's political puppet for years? Caught in a motel with someone very underage. Every protection Victor had was stripped away. And then came the final strike. We timed it for the quarterly shareholders meeting, a lavish event Victor always treated like his personal coronation. The ballroom was packed, cameras everywhere, when the giant screen behind him lit up, not with the presentation he'd planned, but with a live feed from the FBI's field office. "Victor Hall," the voice said over the loudspeakers, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice." Gasps filled the room. Security didn't even move. They just let the agents walk right up to him, cuff him, and read him his rights in front of everyone. At IT was over. Victor's empire collapsed in weeks. His companies were liquidated, his home seized, his friends vanished. And as for Denise, she didn't just survive. She thrived. One night, months later, I found her on the balcony of her new penthouse, sipping champagne. "You got what you wanted," I said. She smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the city skyline. "No," she said. "I got what I was owed." I never thought my story would turn into a war. When I first met Victor Hale, I didn't see the predator hiding behind his smile. It was at a charity gala, the kind where people drink champagne just to have something in their hands while they scan the room for someone more important to talk to. I was there because my boss couldn't make it, and she sent me in her place, armed with a tight black dress, a stack of her business cards, and a promise to network aggressively. Victor was impossible to miss. 6'3", tailored navy suit, a presence that made the air shift when he walked into the room. He caught me scanning the crowd, and instead of just nodding politely like most men, he walked straight toward me. "You look like you're debating whether to stay or run," he said. Holding out a glass of champagne, "I'm deciding if it's worth staying for the free drinks," I replied, smirking. That he laughed, the kind of deep, confident laugh that makes you feel like you've just said the wittiest thing in the world. In that moment, I didn't see a ruthless CEO who had chewed through competitors like they were appetizers. I saw a man who made me feel like the only person in the room. That was his gift. His weapon. Within 6 months, I was no longer that woman who showed up at the gala. I was Denise Hale, his wife, his partner, the face he brought to every board dinner and investor trip. People told me I was lucky. And for a while, I believed them. The truth is, Victor didn't marry me because he loved me. He married me because I was useful, and one day, I'd make him regret it. The first year of our marriage was a dream, or at least, it looked like one from the outside. We traveled to Monaco, dined in Paris, drank wine on rooftops in Florence. Instagram perfect moments, all curated to tell the world that Victor and I were madly in love. What no one saw were the small moments that didn't make it onto social media. The way his phone was always face down on the table. The sudden business trips with no real explanation. The dinners where he'd nod along while I talked, but his eyes were somewhere else entirely. I brushed it off at first. Victor was busy, he ran a multi-million-dollar company, after all. But then, little things started to shift. He began locking his office at home. He started taking calls in the driveway instead of inside the house. And when I asked about it, he'd say, "Denise, you're overthinking again." That phrase, "you're overthinking," became his favorite weapon. A way to make me question my own instincts. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Thursday night. Victor had flown back from a conference in Chicago, and I was unpacking his suitcase while he showered. Buried under his shirts was a folded piece of paper, a hotel receipt. The problem? The dates didn't match his trip. And the name of the guest staying with him wasn't his. It was mine, but I had never been to that hotel. I froze, reading it again and again, trying to make sense of it. Why would Victor use my name to check someone else into a hotel? And who was this other guest listed under a fake name? When he walked out of the shower, towel around his waist, I slipped the receipt into my pocket before he could see it. I smiled like nothing was wrong. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing something inside me had shifted. I didn't just want to know the truth. I wanted to destroy him with it. From that night on, my marriage became a performance. Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" was a calculated move. Victor had no idea that while he was busy keeping his secrets, I was already working on mine. I started with the small things. His desk drawer key was easy to duplicate. A quick trip to the hardware store while he was at the gym. His laptop? He thought the password was clever. The date we met. I guessed it in less than 10 seconds. What I found made my blood run cold. Emails to investors that weren't really investors. Shell companies registered in offshore accounts. Wire transfers so large they looked like typos, except they weren't. Victor wasn't just running a business. He was running something illegal. And then there were the messages. Late-night texts to a woman named Sabrina. She wasn't just a fling, she was involved in his business. She knew things. Dangerous things. But here's the part that almost made me laugh. Victor had no clue how sloppy he was. His arrogance was my biggest advantage. So I started documenting everything. Every shady email, every bank transfer, every affectionate message. To Sabrina. I bought a small safe and hid it in the attic behind an old box of Christmas decorations. Inside, I stored USB drives, printed documents, even screenshots from his phone when he left it unlocked for 30 seconds too long. Meanwhile, I played the role of the devoted wife flawlessly. Candlelit dinners. Weekend getaways. Public displays of affection that made our friends jealous. Victor thought he was in complete control, but I wasn't planning a divorce. I was planning an execution, the kind that wouldn't just end our marriage. It would end his empire. I knew that taking Victor down wouldn't happen overnight. If I moved too quickly, he'd smell the trap. Men like him, full of ego, convinced of their own brilliance, are paranoid by nature. So I shifted gears. Instead of digging alone, I made myself useful to his business. I volunteered to help with scheduling, client dinners, and expense reports, things his assistant couldn't handle without raising eyebrows. Victor loved it. In his mind, I was finally becoming the perfect partner, beautiful, loyal, and invested in his success, but behind the scenes, I was building a puzzle. Piece by piece, I learned that his real money wasn't coming from his public-facing company at all. That was just the shell. The real cash flowed through a web of fake consulting contracts, inflated invoices, and real estate deals that never actually happened. Every time I uncovered a new layer, I didn't just save it, I made copies of copies. One USB drive in the attic safe. Another buried in the garden inside a waterproof container. A third mailed to a P.O. box I opened under a fake name, because if Victor suspected anything, my life wouldn't just get messy, it could get dangerous. And then I found her. Sabrina wasn't just a mistress or a business partner. She was the gatekeeper. Every shady deal passed through her hands. She had codes, account numbers, blackmail files on other people who'd done business with Victor. If I could get Sabrina talking, I wouldn't just have enough to ruin Victor, I'd have enough to make him untouchable to everyone else. So I set a trap for her. One she'd never see coming. Sabrina thought she was meeting me for drinks. A casual girls' night, to celebrate some imaginary milestone I made up, something about Victor finally getting a new investor. She loved gossip, and she loved to feel like she had insider access to Victor's life. I picked a quiet, dimly lit bar. Somewhere that felt private, but wasn't. Every booth had a perfect line of sight for the small camera I'd hidden in my bag, angled toward her seat. From the moment she sat down, I kept the tone light, compliments about her shoes, laughter about Victor's over-the-top spending habits. The drinks kept flowing, then I dropped it. You know, I said, swirling my glass, Victor's been acting strange. Sometimes I wonder if he's keeping things from me, big things. Sabrina smirked. That's just Victor. He doesn't trust anyone with everything. You know that, right? I tilted my head, pretending to be curious but hurt. What do you mean? And then she started talking. Not just little things, she spilled names, dates, account details, even where Victor kept his real ledgers. It was like watching a dam burst. The camera caught everything. Every word, every smirk, every careless detail. By the time the night was over, I wasn't just holding enough dirt to destroy Victor's empire. I was holding enough to make sure Sabrina would never turn on me, because in this game, revenge wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure no one could fight back once you did. The next morning, I sent 3 emails. One to a journalist I'd been feeding small, harmless industry tips to for months. One to a financial crimes investigator who'd been circling Victor's name for years but never had enough to stick. And one to Victor himself. His email had no subject line. Just a single sentence: you should have kept your friends closer. Attached was a still image from the hidden camera footage, Sabrina's face in mid-laugh, her wineglass raised, and Victor's ledger sitting wide open in the background. By noon, he'd called me 6 times. I didn't answer once that afternoon. I walked into his office building like I owned the place. The security guard, a man Victor had once mocked in front of clients, smiled and waved me through without checking my bag. Inside that bag was a USB drive with the entire conversation from the night before, plus copies of every document Sabrina had revealed. I left it on the desk of his CFO. No note. No explanation. Just the truth, wrapped in silence. By the end of the week, whispers had turned into headlines. Headlines into investigations. And investigations into frozen accounts. Victor didn't just lose his company, he lost control. And For someone like him, that was worse than losing everything else combined. Within 2 weeks, Victor's empire was nothing but smoke. The board voted him out. The government seized his assets. Sabrina disappeared, rumor had it, somewhere with a new identity and none of the loyalty she'd promised him. I didn't see him again until months later. He was sitting alone at a cheap diner, wearing the same suit I'd last seen him in. Only now it hung loose on him, wrinkled and tired. Our eyes met for a second. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. I just smiled. Not out of kindness. Out of victory, because revenge isn't about destroying someone in one blow. It's about making sure they feel every step of the fall. And Victor? He felt every single one.